I can imagine going from Uber to the airport to the airline to WH Smith to whomever. And if I could coordinate that entire campaign, it'd be a home run. But today, oh, talk
Is
about
that what SMG is? I mean, you guys have WH and InMotion, which is two of them, but then you'd have to work with Uber and Connective. Like, are you working with them?
Well, I wouldn't want to reveal any big secrets or
Right.
live conversations, but
This is the middleman. This is where companies as big as Kroger break news, as far as we understand.
well, what I would say is watch this space.
You're listening to the Middlemen podcast with me, Tom Limongello, and my co-host Todd Sawicki. Our careers have put us in the middle between retail, media, and brands. But retail media is a closed loop, so we're here to open up the channel and let you listen in. Join our discussions with the people who make retail media happen. Welcome to the Middlemen. Today's episode is going to be with Sean Crawford from a company called SMG. Ever heard of a company called SMG, Todd?
Well, if it's the SMG we all know and love, it's a large media agency, a large holdco. But we started talking to Sean, we realized, oh wait, there's different companies called SMG.
Sean is coming from the UK with, I think, something like 17 years of experience in retail media, which most people in the US would be like, what are you talking about? But if we go back to our episode with Clive Humby and, one of my favorite commercials ever in the retail media space, the 30th anniversary commercial for Tesco's Club Card.
If I hear Club
Card.
Club card accepted.
I just wanted the rewards.
Basically, that whole world is what spawned retail media.
Yeah, that's what I think most people don't realize is how mature the retail media market is in the UK and Europe. It's actually more advanced, more mature than the US, and I'm not sure most people realize that. So our interest, once we learned what the real SMG was, which is a company that helps retailers, build and manage retail media businesses over there in the UK originally, now in the US, it's a good. The point talking to Sean is just to understand those differences and what is going on in the UK, and it should give some indications as to what's going to happen here in the US as a result. And learning from a market where it is more mature, again, unusually so, where there's a digital ad business outside the US that's actually more advanced. In this case, it is. And as a result, there's a lot we can learn. There's perspectives on what they've done differently. And there's differences in how their market emerged. Like there's differences, I think, in in-store and CTV. And I think you have a good perspective on some of those differences.
Yeah, if you listen to this episode, there's going to be words in there like till instead of register or point of sale. There's going to be other terms in there. But I think that there's another fundamental thing that you need to understand in listening to this is the evolution of how the UK, because they've had retail media for a long time, how the stores evolved. And in the US, you go into a store and all the trade elements that you might see, like a cardboard display in the middle of the aisle, or stickers on the floor, or shelf talkers, wobblers, all those things that we love talking about and making fun of. Those are usually supplied by a vendor. So you have Neptune, you have Vestcom, you have a whole bunch of companies out there that are printing things in the US, and it's not the retailer. But in the UK, the retailer does all of that and they measure all of that. And so because they haven't had these additional vendors, when it came to thinking about in-store media or retail media, the UK is not as precious about everything having to be digital to be able to be measured. And so since the retailer had more control of what's happening in the store, they think of analog displays as also retail media that can be measured in ways that help understand the holistic buy for the brand. And so I think that's a really big part that if you didn't know that, you would be like, what are you guys talking about in terms of holistic buying?
Sean is a knowledgeable person. You said he's been in the space for a long time, basically his whole career. Whereas most of the people in the US are moving into retail media from either other aspects of the retail media, like the trade side, or they're coming from the online ad tech world. And it's good to have someone who's been in the business for a long time and has some interesting perspectives, and hopefully can, it help us understand some of those differences. The in-store piece being more advanced over there is really fascinating, and other aspects, the holistic buying being more commonplace, I think are good lessons for us in here for those in the U.S.
Yeah, and to think of where they're going in the US, because they have a retailer here we'll talk about, that's more in the airport travel space. And because they have that history of thinking about things holistically, they're thinking about the entire journey of a travel consumer with a retail media mindset. And so fascinating discussion, and I hope you guys enjoy. I'm very happy to welcome Sean Crawford from SMG, which is not Starcom Media Group. We talked about that at Possible. It's going to be difficult to differentiate it probably, but tell us about who you are and where you came from.
Yeah, well, great to be here, and thank you for having me on the podcast. As you said, I'm Sean. I'm from SMG. SMG is a global leader in connected commerce. We help retailers either start up or accelerate their retail media network operation. And by retailers, I also mean commerce businesses as well. We've been doing that for the past 17 years, before retail media was even a physical term. So quite lucky and fortunate to be a pioneer in that space. And SMG also has a brand side business, which helps some of the biggest brands basically do their media planning, buying, operation, delivery, and measurement over in the UK as well. And then we have a retail media network piece of technology that is called PlanApps that helps retail media networks really take the pain points out of that delivery service for advertisers, whether that's the media planning, the media management, the inventory management, the media analysis, and is used by some of the biggest retailers over in the UK and now in the US. My role specifically, I lead North America, having been with the business for the past 14 years. And over that time, have worked with some of the leading retailers over in the UK. And for the last 18 months, have been in the US. So that's a bit about me.
A great place to start is, I think there's a difference in the readiness, the maturation of the retail media market, especially in the UK versus US. Now you've been here for 18 months. What's your perspective on some of those differences between the two? I think that was what really interested us in talking to you, is like, oh, we've heard so much about, especially the UK, its origins with Tesco. And so it'd be great to sort of get your take on the differences between the two markets.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a minute ago that we've been doing this for the past 17 years. Retail media isn't a new thing, right? And I think Tesco is a great example of that, who started to look at their club card data, their loyalty card, and went, how do we make that more useful for us as a business to enhance the shopping experience? Well, there's a whole host of first-party data there, so let's look at how we can personalize our advertising to those shoppers that we want to ultimately engage with us, become more loyal to us, and buy more products. I think Tesco in the UK really led that space by, first of all, literally just looking at how to do coupons at till that were personalized based on shopping behavior, then looking at how they could use that information to personalize the in-store experience. I think that's step number one, where there's a big difference between North America and the UK and probably wider in Europe, and that's the fact that it started in the store. North America very much started with the on-site and off-site, the digitalization of retail media, whereas in the UK especially, retail media is considered any touch point in the store. So I hear a lot of people talking about retail media being only a digital play, and I couldn't disagree more with that kind of ethos. Retail media for me and SMG is really any touch point that a customer can come into contact with in a physical store, on a .com e-commerce platform, or off-site, that can be related back to a point of purchase. And that's why all the physical touch points, the analog touch points, those kind of cardboard paper touch points that exist in a store, Tesco now, and then Sainsbury's, who we helped set up, and then also all the other retail media networks that followed in the UK, use not just the digital touch points, but all of the physical touch points as well. And that leads on to the second point of how retail media is bought differently in the UK. They really look at it as a total all-encompassing buy. So they don't buy it by channel. They don't say, hey, I want to do some digital screens, or hey, I want to do audio, or hey, I want to do some in-store cardboard. They say, I have got X budget and I would like to set a KPI to drive penetration in category, or to drive a launch of an MPD, or to get out of category and bring new shoppers in. And to do that, I'm going to use everything at my disposal that's possible within that retail media network. Again, whether it's paper, analog, or digital, whether it's in-store, on-site, or off-site. And so they buy it holistically as one campaign with the retail media network, with one point of entry that makes sure that they have a holistic campaign wherever the shopper sees it. And so I think when we're talking about differences, those are really two stark differences versus the North American market, where things are very much digital first, on-site and off-site first, and then really the in-store conversations have only been happening for the last kind of, let's say, 18 months to 2 years, and still really hasn't taken hold and followed what Europe has done. And then secondly, around how it's bought. I think those are the two big differences.
So before we get into how it's bought, which I think is going to be very interesting and probably meat of the conversation, when we talked about this at Possible, I was kind of wondering how was it even the case that you had more in-store retail media in Europe? And Europe always has, a lot of these innovations in retail before the US does. And it sounded like there was a few different aspects. One about that I didn't realize that there were just no vendors allowed to do the cardboard displays, right? Like it's all sort of the retailer. Is that
Yeah.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I think if you think about the big names, you've got Tesco, you've got Sainsbury's, you've got Asda, Morrison's, Co-op, and so on in the grocery space, they completely control that retail media network operation, and they see it as owned inventory. It is not third-party inventory. It's their store. It's their environment to control. And so they actually do the end-to-end fulfillment process within their existing operations in the store. If you think about it, like stores are printing their own materials, communicating with their customers in the store, doing brand or trade campaigns themselves that communicate their retail message. So why would you not then just bolt on the retail media network operation into that and create efficiencies of scale? It helps them, of course, with their cost of producing all of this, but ensures that it just seamlessly fits into their operation. So there are not third-party vendors going in, putting up, stuff at POS. They're not erecting, individual cardboard shippers or FSDUs or containers. That is all done by the retailers. And I think, again, this is why it integrates really nicely into the retail media network, because at the same time that paper, cardboard, analog is going up in the store, so is the digital screen that's going live, so is the audio, so is the on-site and the off-site. And that creates a really nice holistic experience, because one of the things that I'm really passionate about is we're not selling ad space here. What we are trying to do is create better campaigns that marketers engage with, that gets that incremental advertising dollar into the retailer and ultimately enhances the customer experience. If we're just putting different messages on site versus in a store, we're not creating a great customer experience. It's not great to see something different on your mobile cell phone versus what you see in a store versus what you see on a website. It should be holistic. And that's when retailers really win at retail media. And I think Europe does a good job of that.
So does that mean that the JBPs are just in harmony in the UK? Is it a super easy thing? Is there no challenge between the merchant and the retail media group? Are they all one? Like,
yeah.
How is it different?
Of course, there's challenges. Of course, there are. And, one of the things that SMG does is it goes in and helps retailers look at this governance and helping set up these retail media networks, or optimizing where there's those kind of natural pain points that happen in setting up this operation. I think, look, retailers are retailers first and foremost. They're media companies second. They're trying to become media companies, and many of them now, in their right, do multi-millions of dollars in media and are kind of becoming a force to be reckoned with in the media opportunities that exist for advertisers to choose from. But to do that, they've had to get the governance and the setup right. And the first place to do that is to think about how you work with merchandising. And what I think is really interesting is that merchandising in many of the partners that we work with absolutely controls the JBP. They are there to set the trade negotiations, set how product is sold and what is ranged and the price is set at. But they shouldn't be having a media conversation because they're not the experts in that field. That's where the retail media network should come in. And so it's a real joint operation between the network and the merchant to make sure that it's a joined up approach, so that if there's a big NPD launch or a big buy in a certain category or a price promotion, that is then supported by the retail media network as well with a media buy. And it again becomes much more holistic because whatever's on promotion is then supported by media. Instead of walking into a store, you spend all this money on media with the network and your competitors on at half price, and everyone buys the competitor at half price. So for us, it makes much more sense to be joined up with merchandising and ensure it holistically works across all the touch points, whether that is analog or digital.
As a follow-up to that, I think there's an interesting question that also emerges between the UK and here on the buy side. You're talking about holistic buying. That's
Mm.
actually been, I think, one of the interesting conversations in North America, which is the buy side is as far from holistic as it can get. You've got shopper marketing and trade dollars. You've got brand dollars. They're two different teams, two different agencies, a group in the agency, a group at the client, and they don't talk together and they have different budgets and goals. And do you see that differently in the UK where the dollars are controlled? It's a more holistic buy to begin with. And I think that's one of the tensions here in North America is
Mm.
it's not a holistic budget anywhere, or rarely at this point.
Look, I don't think anyone's got a perfect solution to that. I think we've got to be really transparent about that at this point because different parties are all trying to do different things. But it has to evolve. With 200, 300 networks that exist now, it has to evolve for people to be able to buy more efficiently and also then to connect into the traditional above the line media and wider media strategy that they have. I think what I've seen is when I was running our kind of agency brand business in the UK and we were working with people like General Mills and they were looking at how do you make this work holistically. A lot of those brands are going through the exact same evolution that the RMNs and the agencies are trying to go through, which is to organize their businesses to be able to work in this new world of advertising. And they're all on a journey to do that. Some are already there, some of them are on the process, some of them haven't even started. And so they're trying to set themselves up to be able to buy in this new world. I think where the kind of narrative is going is that we should stop thinking about it as a trade dollar, a shopper dollar, a retail media network dollar. It is the same dollar. The CMO has got one P&L. Ultimately, they're trying to achieve their objective of building their brand. And our founding belief, our founder talks about this, a guy called Matthew Lee, who you may have seen on LinkedIn for Outfit of the Day. He wears jazzy outfits. He talks about the reason he founded the business is that he wanted a retail media dollar to be the most powerful dollar a brand could invest and to be able to prove that with transparent measurement. And so that you would put that dollar into retail media instead of putting it into a TV campaign or put it into an out-of-home campaign or a more traditional media format. And that's been our founding guiding principle ever since. And I think clients, as we've worked with them, have evolved into that sense to help them maximize their budgets.
Well, that brings up another question, which is, you're working with Boots, Asda, Deliveroo, Morrison's. I mean, it's like all the names that I know pretty much in the UK market. Do brands come to you and say, spend my dollar as you see fit across these retailers? Or is it one retailer at a time? Or how does it work from an aggregation standpoint?
Two parts to our business. So that when we're reporting and working with the retailers who've hired us to basically operate their retail media network, we represent the retailer ultimately. The best way to compare it to is a Roundel at Target or an 8451 at Kroger. We're doing the end-to-end service of the kind of ad sales through to the campaign management, through to the ad tech, through to the campaign measurement. And that's where we represent the retailer in their name: Boots Media Group, Morrison's Media Group, Alice 11 at Asda, the WH Smith North American Media Network. We are the retailer. It's just powered by SMG and our technology and our people. And that's where we will approach the brands and ultimately take their brief on what they want to achieve with that individual retailer question to then achieve their objectives with that retailer and hopefully deliver that return that they're looking for and create that lovely flywheel. If we go to the other side of the coin, which is where we're talking with the General Mills example, we represent the brand. And actually, in that case, it's about what's the brand trying to do? What are they wanting to achieve across multiple networks? Now, that only exists for us at the moment in the UK as a market. But as an agency, we are there to represent some of the biggest CPGs and to look at the dozen or so leading retail media networks in the UK and work out where their pounds should be best invested. So it's not about percentage of share in the market of Tesco having 30% and then Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrison's and Co-op all following. It's about actually saying, where is that pound going to deliver the best return based on that brand's objectives? And so it's looked at holistically across the market.
One of the things that we haven't solved the brand buying, but it sounds like it's at least a better conversation or more evolved. Maybe they're in the UK and therefore there's hope in the US for it maybe to get better. And I think the sell side, at least, is definitely trying to push that same message. Like, you're trying to deliver the best campaign possible. And for that, we need to include as many parties on that side. in that discussion. Your merchandising example, I think, in terms of bad merchandising can lead to a bad campaign, is a powerful point of view. Now, the other side of that, I think as people have become interested in retail media and growing retail media, especially North America, has been how do we get agencies to buy more and be more involved? And you talked about your role having a brand and agency component, underscore agency. And have the agencies been more involved? Are you seeing cross retailer campaigns in the UK? Obviously, it's a hot topic here. The idea is we have programmatic retail media. How do we build tools for cross retail buying, and how do we maybe make it so that they can use the tools they've been using? Like we were talking with Marcus Pratt or Mediasmith, who's works at an indie media agency here in the US, and he was talking about some of the challenges as they try to do more, and especially cross retailer. So what's your perspective on what is going to unlock agencies? What's the experience in the UK maybe different than here, and where do you think we'll be successful selling to agencies here in the US when it comes to retail media?
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity with agency spend. Ultimately, the agencies have got more dollars flowing around and more choice about where they spend those dollars than the retailers are getting from their endemic immediate kind of fair share prize that they're looking to optimize. So all the retail media networks are wanting to access those dollars, and they're all coming and saying, how do we do that? How do we unlock it? And the first thing that has to be addressed is how to make that easier for agencies to ultimately engage and buy from, because they can't spread across 200-300 networks, just like an individual brand can't spread across 200-300 networks. And I think we're starting to see technology solutions pop up, aggregators that are coming together to help do that. I think we'll see a lot of networks actually starting to collaborate more. This concept of walled gardens, I think over time is going to erode, especially if you're outside of, let's say, the top 5. You're going to need to start collaborating and understanding how you could work together in order to A, increase your data pool and your size of opportunity for a brand or advertiser to work with you, and B, to ensure that it is seamless again across multiple different verticals or markets or regions, geographies, for brands to do those multi-buys. I think for the agencies, there is a bit of a race going on, A, for talent, but B, for capability. And if you look at the different big holding groups, they all have varying levels of stages of maturity in that race. Some have gone for an acquisition route to acquire that knowledge, that capability, that technology, and others are looking to build it themselves, and others are doing a combination of the two. And I think the reason that there's suddenly this big focus on that from agencies is because of the meteoric rise of retail media over the last kind of 5 years or so, which has actually seen spend shift out of traditional formats in terms of advertising formats into retail media. And if you're a big agency group, you're just seeing that money move and you're wanting to be a part of that conversation. So I think they're moving in that direction to be able to ultimately grow their own business and protect the existing revenue that they have in advertising. And therefore, it's really important that networks embrace that and look at how they can work with the big agency groups to bring in that advertising. The thing they talk about a lot is that they want it to be standardized, and they want it to have clear measurement standards, and that they want it to stand up to other more traditional, I can't believe I'm about to say programmatic is traditional, but more traditional kind of buying forms.
It's traditional, I think, at this point.
Yeah. It is. And I hear them, but I also challenge it a little bit. If we are trying to shoehorn retail media into what works for programmatic or works for social, we're just trying to fit a square plug into a round hole. That is not going to work. There has to be a acceptance that what is the right standards for, let's say, grocery as a vertical is completely different for a department store vertical, is completely different for an electrical vertical, is completely different for a drug and beauty vertical. They all have varying product portfolios at different price points, have different sophistications in terms of digital capabilities. And it's very, I think, easy to say and stand up on stage, we're just going to standardize all this, we're going to put these measurement principles in place, and we'll all be able to buy more simply. I think that's just really waving a magic wand. It's going to be much more complicated than that. And we have to accept that we won't be able to put the principles of what has been done in programmatic and social into retail media just to open up the ease of media buying.
We talked a lot about what's better about the UK. Let's be honest about where is the US potentially stronger in the retail media world?
I mean, don't get me wrong, the UK is not perfect by any means. There's a lot the UK should be doing a lot better. And I think actually that's one of the things that's been brilliant about us expanding into North America, being able to bring that knowledge to our UK partners. And they are really appreciating that. I think that global view is really helping many evolve. I think we've talked a little bit about how North America's been digital first, and that's absolutely its strength. If you look at its on-site capabilities and off-site integrations, they are far beyond where the UK and actually Europe as well is at. We have seen, recently at Cannes and even last year, the real beginnings of partnerships and that use of first-party data, linking into publishing sites, linking into other areas that can create more holistic but also more exciting campaigns for marketers. That growth of connected TV in North America as well is ahead of Europe, and how people consume connected TV is ahead of Europe. And I think that is where Europe is following North America, and it is looking to North America for proof points of what they should be doing, where they should be investing, where they should be turning around their legacy tech stacks. A lot of these retailers in Europe are old. They probably won't appreciate me saying old. Let's say they're heritage retailers with heritage websites, and therefore there's a lot of investment.
There's a euphemism. Heritage.
I like that one. I've never heard that, but I like it.
Maybe that's a British.
It sounds quaint.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think they are definitely looking at how and where to invest. But they can't do everything. No one can do everything. So where you're seeing the US really going, hey, let's put screens in store, that's already been done in Europe. We've got screens. So it's now like, okay, the flip role of that is how do we improve our on-site and off-site experience?
Well, I'm trying to get my daughter to watch some tennis. So I was watching Djokovic this morning, playing against Evans, and I'm watching it on Hulu. I'm not sure I'm going to get the types of commercials that would show the retail media tie-ins to the UK, but are you seeing a ton of those types of commercials already?
Great example. So Wimbledon is shown on linear TV, BBC, no adverts. There you go.
Right.
You're getting a really integrated Hulu experience based on your viewing habits, a load of data touch points with retail media probably feeding into that as well. That's not the case with one of the biggest sporting events in the UK this year. Now, of course,
one that's full of heritage. I mean, this should be all over. Yeah.
Well, the big controversy this year is that there's no linesman and it's all been done electronically, and there's no one there in their smart uniforms anymore.
We'll get to AI. But I think the bulk of what you wanted to talk about is probably the fact that you're entering the US and you're working with WH Smith. And so you're moving out of the grocery world into the airport with bookstores and in-motion electronics retailers. Tell us about what that business is like, because I think it's still retail. It's not really commerce media. It's still retail media, but it's a totally different venue.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And I think whilst we're known for grocery in the UK, we work across multiple other verticals and have helped dozens of different commerce and retail partners do that, from specialty to department store to drug, beauty and so on. So the move into travel with WH Smith actually leverages some of the things that we're brilliant at. And I'd say that humbly. We look at the store, we're talking about airport stores here. WH Smith does not have an e-commerce site. You are not using WH Smith on an e-commerce in an airport. So what they have is a whole owned and operated property that can enhance the customer experience if it's monetized in the right way. They also want to ultimately encourage all of you to walk through a WH Smith store when you're going through an airport. You're in a closed environment. You can't really go anywhere until you are called to board on your flight, and therefore you're looking for something to do, or you are ultimately trying to pass the time, or you have a distress moment because you've forgotten something or something's broken. And so engaging with you through your cell phone, through your social feeds, through your kind of journey to the airport, as well as when you're in the physical airport, is really important to them, so that they know that you could possibly then go into their store and engage with their product mix. I think what's brilliant about airports for brands, though, is it's an opportunity for trial. And it's a different type of trial.
Tons of new to brand people coming from overseas and things like that, right?
You've got a premium audience, first of all. We're all very fortunate in this industry to be traveling quite a lot, but that's not the norm. You're looking at people with high disposable income who are either in vacation mode and are excited about going on vacation. They've saved for it and they've got some disposable income to treat themselves. or you're looking at business travelers who are on work trips that are probably funded for them, and they're looking again to make that as seamless as possible, but also potentially to treat themselves. And then you're looking at the more kind of casual traveler that's trying to get from A to B because it's logistically part of their routine, but again, someone with a high disposable income. So you've got people who are looking and interested in trying new product. And for technology brands who are trying to get you to buy a new set of headphones, for example, that's great. They can get the product into your hands. You can try them on the store. You can listen to them. Of course, WH Smith want you to buy them there, but for the brand, they're happy for you to buy them anywhere.
Right.
And they ultimately want you to buy them in a place that's convenient for you. And when we're at the premium end of that market, when we're talking like $800 for a pair of headphones, that trial is really important. So an airport experience, I think, is something that when you look at what can be done in airports, can be really fun, it can be engaging, it can be customer enhancing, but it can also solve issues that people have in moments of distress. And that's really exciting as a media network opportunity versus others that are much more about immediate consumption.
Well, I mean, the other distress is the retailer not having enough places for people who are normally e-commerce friendly to try on the products or or try the limited time offers. I was in an airport, and a British brand that my wife loves from her childhood, the Terry's orange slices. Yeah, I'd never heard of those, but they had a new format. It was like little like M&M styles, and I was like, oh, so they're doing LTOs in the airport. That's interesting.
Yeah. You definitely get some really exclusive or limited ranges in airports, and it changes by region. And that's something that WH Smith are really good at. The reason that many people haven't heard of them is because they have complete regionalized brands that represent the local market. So, it's district market over in San Francisco. But if you're over running through somewhere in Miami or in New York, it's a completely different brand. And that's because they're trying to represent the local market, have a local product assortment, and then have all of the kind of national big brands that you love and want and expect to see, supported then by the electronics as well. And I think the kind of InMotion brand has a lot of kind of resonance with people who are really big fans of technology and look for technology solutions of carrying the latest products. There's a real nice product mix there. And it means that they can really connect and engage with people and offer brands and advertise as something that they can't do elsewhere. And so for us, it's a really exciting opportunity. We're launched it in January. We'll be coming up to year 2 at the start of 2026. And there's a big opportunity for partnership in this as well. And that's where I see, we spoke about it a little bit earlier, but this space going, there's a really interesting play to connect up to the travel mobility operators that are taking you to the airport, all the way through then to the airports themselves, through to then other realtors in those airports, through to the airlines who are carrying you from A to B, and then speaking again in the other airport, and then the mobility operator that takes you on the other side. Think about that as a massive data play. They have all got information that is interesting on where you are, where you've been, how often you go, who you like to fly with, what products you engage with. There's a huge buy there that brands would be very interested in.
So what's interesting, you talk about there is an integrated campaign, which 20 years ago you'd run through an ad network. Mm-hmm. And are we needing to, and programmatic was the way to kind of build an ad network on the fly. And is there a way to maybe combine those two? Makes total sense, right? The idea as a buyer, as a marketer, the ability to program a campaign across those multiple channels or touch points makes a ton of sense. And it's like on paper, it would totally work. And so I think the question then is, how do you get those retailers to work together? I think that's kind of the thing that we're all struggling with a little bit, which is if you're the person, the campaign manager who goes, oh, I can imagine going from Uber to the airport to the airline to WH Smith to whomever, and if I could coordinate that entire campaign, it'd be a home run. But today, talk about like there's no general contractor that can we do a remodeling of your house. You have a general contractor who works with all the subcontractors to make that happen, right. But that there is no general contractor.
Or is that what SMG is? I mean, you guys have WH and InMotion, which is 2 of them, but then you'd have to work with Uber and Connective. Like, are you working with them?
Well, I wouldn't want to reveal any big secrets or live conversations, but
this is the middleman. This is where companies as big as Kroger break news, as far as we understand.
Well, what I would say is watch this space. I think that is definitely where the market is going. It makes sense. As we were saying, we've got to make this easier for agencies buy behind and for brands to engage with. And that's the way the market needs to go. And I think some of the big operators in this space know that, just like some of the smaller operators know that as well. And it's going to be the first movers in that space that I think will have something really exciting for brands to then engage with. Of course, you're still going to get operators who want to do this themselves. And I think that's why I talk about the top 5 networks probably will still continue to operate as they are, because they have that scale and that power. But if you're outside of that, we've got to start looking at how you collaborate and partner in every vertical, and travel is a great place to start.
So I saw something in the news recently. I think I was right about this, but if not, we'll cut it. Was it WH Smith that partnered up with Amazon to license the walk out technology? Is that right?
That is a good question. I know that they have used walkout technology in some of their stores. I'm not sure if it's an exclusive with Amazon or whether it's another provider.
From SMG's perspective, what are the tools that you're already using? Is it creative? Workflow? Is it computer vision to figure out what people are doing in the stores for consumer journeys? Where is AI touching your business?
I mean, it's all over it. And I think that's a good thing. For me, AI is not something to be feared. It's something that's going to enhance, ultimately, businesses, but also then customer experiences at the end of the journey cycle. I think if you look at the really obvious areas that it will affect in media, and I mean this media broadly, not just retail media, creative is a very obvious one, where you had to previously produce hundreds of assets for a campaign. That is now going to get pretty much automated. And I think if you just compare, and for example, Coca-Cola last Christmas had a whole AI generated ad versus their traditional ad. Like, just look at the power of that. That is going to jump on year to year to year. And then how they use that Coca-Cola ad across different formats, across different networks, can all be automated through AI.
Well, I mean, I think it's actually much harder to automate Coke's normal advertising, especially the brand advertising. On the trade marketing, shopper marketing front, the biggest challenge was getting the brand to understand the style guides of the retailer to make sure that those lower funnel or mid funnel ads actually were not a pain to create week over week. And so the automation of that, I think, would make total sense. However, that was like 5 years ago. That was the challenge. Has that been fixed, or is that still too difficult?
We fixed that with some of our partners. So it takes, a lot
Good to hear.
And a lot of work, but once you get it up and running, the saving off the back of it is worth it. So yes, that can absolutely be done. And I think more people should be doing it. And if they want to talk about that, they know where I am. But I think also looking at the wider kind of operational side of retail media, there's a lot of opportunity to smooth that out as well. A great example is in Plan Apps platform. All of our measurement reporting now is done by AI. So it pulls the feeds straight from the retailer in terms of their sales data. It analyzes that, and then it will compare it against the averages and benchmarks of the category, of the store footprint, across various other benchmarks that you ask it to, and it will give you an automated copy output off the back of it. So that what used to take weeks now takes minutes, if that, to plug through, as long as the sales data is plugged in. So things like this are going to get quicker, which means that brands can learn quicker, and it means they can implement and make that flywheel move faster and shorten the cycle of knowledge learning.
So yeah, when we first talked, we talked about measurement and the fact that you guys were using a UK company, Lumen, to measure attention and things like that. Since the UK and Europe is not as digitally focused as the US is in terms of the way they've rolled out retail media, how is measurement? Is it all last click? Is it something else? Like, what's going on with how retail media is measured?
That's a huge question.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
I'll try and digest it into a few chunks. First of all, I think the Lumen study that we've done with the Co-op Media Network, which Dean Harris, the GM over there, is a huge flag flyer for. It's well worth a look at. If you haven't looked at it, want a copy, let us know.
We can put that in the show notes, sure.
Yeah, no, we will. What that study shows is that when you're in a convenience type store, which is what the Co-op is, it's the number one convenience retailer in the UK, they are not only driving sell-through in their individual store by doing retail media, so sales at the Co-op, they're driving sales at their competitors, because people are going through those stores, they're engaging with the media, they're seeing it, and then they're going to Tesco, to Sainsbury's, to Asda, and buying the product too. So it was a kind of groundbreaking study that showed if you put your advertising budget into Co-op, it's going to drive uplift across multiple retailers, not just Co-op itself.
Because so it really is a Co-op then.
Yeah, because of the frequency of visits and, of course, the kind of eyeballs and attribution is going with that. So I think that was really interesting. To the broader kind of question about measurement, I think there's a little bit of an obsession in the industry about one-to-one attribution. And I understand why. And I understand that it's come from a digital space where you can literally say that I picked up that Coca-Cola versus you picking up that Coca-Cola. But I think when it comes down to it, and this might be a controversial opinion, what Coca-Cola really care about is just shifting more units in that individual store or with that individual retailer. And if you can prove that and show that media has inferred that in that ultimate purchase to happen, and that by investing in more media and learning which channel is driving that uplift, Coca-Cola will probably be pretty happy with that. And yes, the one-to-one attribution on top is brilliant. Yes, linking it to loyalty card data is brilliant, but it doesn't have to always have that. And that's where I think Europe is really focused on this test fee control methodology, and is something that all of our partners use, where you activate media in some stores, but you don't in others. You create control groups and you make sure you minimize as many variables as possible. So you ensure the same pricing, the same ranging, the same store size. You look at the same regions, the social demographics, and you create these tests to show what happens with different combinations of media. And we pull all of that data into Planet Apps so that it then feeds the benchmarks and it feeds the insights for brands to learn from, so that when they're coming into it, they can really make an educated decision instead of having to go, well, how do I spend my money? I need to drive an uplift.
And I feel like I've heard of that concept before. Is that like what Nielsen calls a match market, or is it something else? Sounds like it may be slightly more sophisticated, but I'm not sure.
No, I think different data providers out there, insight companies, have different variations of it. The thing that we like to do is have consistency. So
is it so important for you because Europe is so varied, or is it just the UK?
The reason that it started, the reason Planet Apps started, is brands came to us and said, I'm getting a report from retailer A, a report from retailer B, a report from retailer C, and it's not consistent. How can I compare apples with apples? And so what they needed was a consistent methodology and a consistent platform to help measure them do that. And that's ultimately why Planet Apps was born, and now is used by kind of 95% of the CPGs in the UK.
Wow.
And that means that it's a very well-known, well-used platform, but also drives that consistency for marketers and also budget holders to make decisions on where to spend that investment. And I think what I would encourage globally, and I don't just mean North America in the sense, I do mean it globally, is that we should make sure that perfection is not the enemy of good. We need to focus on the things that are going to help drive growth for this industry, and test fee control will drive growth of in-store media in markets that haven't focused on it, and will ultimately prove to advertisers that they can shift more product if it is set up in the right way. So I think there's an opportunity there, and something that lots of people are talking to us about.
I think I asked you all my tough questions.
Thanks for having me.